Hello and welcome to Political Brew. I'm Phil Hirschkorn. Our topics this week: the $500 million Maine supplemental budget passes. What's in it? The U.S. Senate race, up close with Graham Plattner. The Iran war, week 6. Will the ceasefire hold? And data centers, why Maine could become the first state to block them. My guests are Emily Cain, a Democrat, former state legislator and House Minority Leader, and Jason Levesque, a Republican, former 3-term mayor of Auburn. Thank you both for being here.
Thank you.
This week, the Maine State Legislature narrowly passed and Governor Janet Mills signed a $519 million supplemental budget. Supplemental as it's the smaller second piece of the biennial budget. The votes in the Democratic-controlled legislature along party lines by 5 votes in the House and 2 in the Senate. With $11.65 billion approved last year, this year's $519 million will bring the 2-year total spending to nearly $12.2 billion, almost half the new spending in the form of $300 checks for residents earning up to $50,000 a year. 514,000 Mainers expected to benefit. It'll cost $237 million. A new millionaire's tax, on the other hand, a 2% surcharge on income over $1 million. 2,600 residents expected to be hit with that, but it should raise $90 million a year. Governor Mills told me this week she likes the millionaire's tax.
It's also in reaction to what the Congress and the president did last summer by providing these enormous tax credits to the wealthiest class of Americans. This is a response to that in some respects, and it's a response to the cuts to health care, SNAP benefits, and grants and whatnot that the federal government is imposing on us. We've got to make up some of the difference.
Well, Jason, you're part of the minority party. Almost nobody voted for this. What are your thoughts?
Well, first of all, I want to state that this was a majority budget yet again because they, in the middle of the night, I think they started the vote in the House at 12:30 a.m. So definitely middle of the night, but it was bipartisanly opposed. There's Democrats that went across the aisle and said, wait, enough's enough. Okay, this is an absolute ludicrous idea. The whatnot, as the governor kept saying, doesn't pass the snuff test. I mean, first of all, let's look at it this way. $300 going to people making less than $50,000 a year. They're arbitrarily setting the bar for who is wealthy and who is not. That comes into play with the new millionaire tax, which I find kind of ironic because once they're done spending their money, they've already set the stage. They've redefined who else is the next level of wealthy. And those are people making more than $50,000 a year. So if you don't think this affects you now, it will probably next year or the year after, because once these quote unquote millionaires, otherwise known as small business owners, leave the state, they're going to be the only ones left. And once they get the money, they must keep it. I mean, what we're seeing right now is the Democrat Party going so far to the left, becoming truly the Democrat Socialist Party of Maine. I mean, this is what's going on. And we have a number of instances we'll talk about today, but everybody should pay attention, be very, very concerned, because once these people are gone, they're coming after you.
Emily?
Everybody should be paying attention. This was a multi-week, multi-month negotiated process. We started talking about this budget in January when the governor first proposed the supplemental. It was and is completely normal to finish things at the end of the legislative session into the night. That is sometimes when the best work gets done because everybody has nowhere else to be. And finally, things have calmed down. And that's what happened this week. You saw Democrats really, I think, take one as a win for working families across Maine. You see the $300 checks, which is really designed for immediate relief. As we see, and we're going to talk about this, the price of gas going up, we see some immediate relief to take the burden off, the pressure on your wallet today. And then we see Democrats putting forward this hard negotiated, tax change that's going to bring some additional money into the budget and begin a process of rebalancing the tax code. And the money is going toward things Mainers like 55% of education funding for K through 12. Like free community college, property tax relief, housing. These are things that also help with the affordability curve that help working Mainers now.
What about dipping into the Budget Stabilization Fund, also known as the Rainy Day Fund, for the first time in 8 years of Janet Mills?
It's a significant departure for her, and we heard her articulate that at the beginning of the year. This has been a concerted effort for her, and in a lot of ways, I'm just really grateful she did hold the line on it for 8 years, because now, particularly with the Trump administration and the war in Iran, we're seeing a dramatically different picture than we saw then, and it was foresight I think she didn't even know she was going to have to be that responsible with our state dollars.
I'm not going to address the foresight portion because that is absolutely revisionist history. That doesn't play well. The legislature actually changed the law on how to use the Rainy Day Fund this year so they could give $300 to everybody making, let's quantify this, under $25 an hour. This $50,000 individual cutoff, if you would, you won't get that $300.
It's $50,000 for an individual and $100,000 for joint
a teacher and a
filers.
police officer
Just
that are
to be
married.
clear.
$25 an hour. If you make more than $25 an hour on a full-time year, you will not get a $300 check. It's simple math.
Where would you put the line?
Just like I said about 3 weeks ago on this very show, you don't put the line. $300 reimbursement checks do not work. What you want to do is you want to do a gas holiday, which is now starting to be done throughout the country. You want to eliminate the sales tax for a period of time, and you want to provide meaningful tax relief in the areas in which inflationary pressures are causing pocketbook issues for Mainers, all Mainers, and not just those making under $25 an hour.
And those are specific ideas that were, to my knowledge, I don't know whether any of those were one of the 21 amendments Republicans tried to put on this budget in the final hours of the negotiations into the night. But those are not the kind of proposals we heard publicly rolled out, right? Proposals that could be negotiated, that could be accounted for, and that could be included in a potentially bipartisan balanced budget. That is not what we have here.
We don't have a balanced budget. You guys just formulated more money out of thin air by actually taxing the very people that create jobs and economic growth.
Maine is required to keep a balanced budget. It's really important that we do that,
which
is different than the
taxes.
federal government. So we did that. They did that last year with a bipartisan, a biennial budget that was balanced. This is a supplemental budget which reflects revenue changes. This is completely normal and on time.
If you're a socialist. If you're a socialist and you want to live off everyone else's money.
I am not a socialist
this
by
is such an
measure.
issue.
And
our
also,
state is being pushed so far to the left right now. You see it in the Democratic Civil War that's happening today.
Where are the concrete proposals from the Republicans?
We have an election in November, and we'll see if the voters
I can't wait to talk about that.
We'll have a new governor and possibly a different makeup of the legislature. We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, the Maine U.S. Senate race, one-on-one with Graham Plattner. In the Maine Senate race this week, Democratic candidate Graham Plattner held 3 town halls, filling the rooms as usual in Windham, Augusta, and Orono. We caught up with him in Windham, where an audience member asked Plattner why primary voters should pick him, a 41-year-old oyster farmer and military veteran with no elective experience, over the 2-term governor with decades of experience as a prosecutor, attorney general, and legislator. He mentioned the 78-year-old's pledge to serve only 1 term.
Well, in a seniority-based system, that sets the state of Maine back 6 years. It also means the next time we do this, if we beat Susan Collins after 30 years of trying, why do we want to relitigate this next time around without an incumbent?
The next day, Plattner sat down with me for a 30-minute interview you can watch in full on our streaming channel and app NCM+. We talked mostly about the state of the race, his democracy agenda, his health care agenda, and the Iran war. He said this about the enthusiasm for his campaign.
Our events are open to the public. Anybody can come. We don't screen questions. And if you're going to represent the working people of Maine, you need to go out into working communities and make yourself accessible.
For her part, Mills issued a new policy platform calling for greater congressional oversight of the executive branch, term limits for Congress, amending the Senate's 60 vote to pass anything filibuster rule by requiring them to remain on the floor and actually speak, raising the corporate income tax rate, reduced during Trump's first term, and imposing a new wealth tax.
You cannot ignore the ever-expanding wealth gap. The widening wealth gap that is hurting more middle Americans, middle-class Americans, and low-income Americans than ever before. That on top of the tariffs and the increased cost of living that's impacting millions of Americans, we've got to address that.
Well, Emily, you're on Team Janet. It sounds like the governor's pivoting a little bit again toward Plattner's point of view. You
know, it's interesting. When you look at the policy proposals rolled out by the governor and the policy proposals rolled out by Graham Plattner, there are more similarities than there are differences. I think that's true. I think that really speaks to the different challenges each of these candidates have, right? Graham Plattner is, as you talk about, unknown, right? Now better known, but unknown. Oyster farmer in his early 40s. The governor is well known, extremely well known, actually, over decades of public service in the state of Maine. They both have the burden to prove that they can take on Susan Collins and win in November, but they have different imperatives over the next almost 60 days to say. One is, the governor has to say, I'm here, you know me, we can do this, I'm a fighter, I get you. And he has to prove, I'm new, yeah, I've never been elected, but I've got what it takes now. And I think this is a good example of it. I also think it's interesting, though, that Graham Plattner is there, criticizing the governor for saying she would serve one term, when in his own platform, he advocates for a 2-term limit, which would take, of course, a constitutional amendment and a ratification by 38 states. But it's a sort of an interesting almost hypocrisy of like, yeah, you got to get seniority, but in his world, you would ideally have term limits where everybody would be out in 2. So I think there's sort of inherent dissonance in that. And really, again, it gets back to this fundamental question of which one is making the case they can actually win in November, because that's what Democrats want to do most.
Susan Collins still making the case that her seniority counts most of all.
Yeah,
right?
absolutely. Without a doubt, she's chairwoman of appropriations. Seniority matters in the Senate. But looking back at the Democratic primary, I wouldn't have said this last week, but the actions that have been taken in Augusta and in both Governor Mills and Graham Plattner's campaigns, they've laid the pieces out, they've put them together. We are watching in real time a complete implosion of the Democrat Party that, frankly, I grew up with and I was a member of. Yes, I voted for a Democrat or two before. I was a crazy 18-year-old that voted for Clinton.
Learning things about you today.
Every 18-year-old voted for Bill Clinton.
This.
But what we're doing is we're watching it in real time. You're seeing the governor go further and further to the left, where the Democrat members of the legislature are and probably have been for a couple of years. You're seeing Graham Plattner double-digit leads in the polls, and he's pulling hard to the left, and people are going to the left, but not all of them. What you're seeing right now is two parties. You're seeing the Democrats that I know, I love, I have a beer with on the weekends, and you're seeing the Democrat Socialists of Maine. I'm going to say that a couple more times, probably, if I haven't already, because that's what you have. We are now a 3-party system in the state of Maine. We have Republicans, we have Democrats, and we have Democrat Socialists, and let me tell you, this is not good for the Republic. It's not good for the state.
I mean, he's referring kind of to the Bernie Sanders wing of the party, which has other well-known people in other states.
Sure, but here's the thing. The Democratic Party has always had multiple factions. This is not new for us. In this case, what brings us together is elections. We do not have electoral power in Washington, D.C. That is what is making the governor decide she wants to run for this office now, is the opportunity to turn the tide and turn the balance of power in the Senate. That's the same thing you have going on in the 2nd District, where we have a big primary going on there to be the Democratic nominee. Again, all focused on trying to flip the House by holding that 2nd District seat. You got to have the votes if you're going to get things done, or if you're going to be able to provide a check on the president in Washington, D.C. I think this is an opportunity for Democrats. Let's hash this out in the primary. We'll get to a nominee, and then we're going to get to what Democrats have been focused on, admittedly, for a lot of unsuccessful attempts, which is winning back this Senate seat for Democrats, which is defeating Senator Collins in the fall. And that's going to be a unifying factor for a Democratic Party that admittedly has a broad vision underneath it.
You're absolutely right. The only thing they care about is taking back seats and gaining power.
But you can't do anything
please
if you
hold
don't
on.
have
It's my
votes.
rebuttal time. This isn't last time we were together, Emily. Come on. What we have here right now is you're focused on winning. You're focused on power. You're focused on taking more money from hardworking Mainers of every income level and deciding as a socialist democratic group where that money needs to be spent. This isn't about Mainers. This isn't about future generations. This is about how many people can we milk for as much money as possible before they realize that we can't be in power anymore. I think that time is November.
Maybe it's about a resume versus a fresh face.
Well, or here's the thing. I've served in both the majority and the minority, right? I have been the minority leader working to take back the majority. I can tell you, you can do good work from the minority when you show up with good ideas and want to work across the aisle. I did that. I worked with Governor LePage. I worked with Republicans in the legislature. But what I will tell you is right now, you have a Republican Party in charge doing nothing with the power they have.
In Washington?
In Washington.
Politics
And
are local. We're talking
Democrats need to take power back in Washington to bring some balance, to bring some sanity, and bring some light back into that place.
Bring a little bit more taxes.
Democratic primary, she gets the last word. We're going to take a quick break. And when we come back, the war with Iran on pause. Week 6 of the war with Iran brought a ceasefire. American forces have carried out thousands of bombing missions, destroying much of Iran's navy and crushing its ballistic missile systems. Even with the assassination of its supreme Ayatollah, hardliners who've ruled Iran for 47 years are still in charge. Iran may still have stockpiles of highly enriched uranium used to make nuclear weapons, and Iran now controls the Persian Gulf Strait of Hormuz, blocking the passage of oil tankers, roiling global energy markets and the price of gas here at home. In a Pentagon briefing this week, the Joint Chiefs of Staff Chairman Dan Cain focused on the positive.
Perhaps most importantly, we've destroyed Iran's defense industrial base, their ability to reconstitute those capabilities for years to come. We attacked, along with our partners, approximately 90% of their weapons factories.
Both Senators Susan Collins and Angus King visited Navy shipbuilder Bath Iron Works this week, saying they oppose President Trump possibly deploying ground troops in Iran. King went further, calling the war illegal without congressional authorization.
My hope has always been that this would be a brief but successful conflict that would eliminate the ballistic missiles that Iran uses as a shield for its nuclear enrichment and development of a nuclear weapon.
That during this whole period there hasn't been a single congressional public hearing on this war. Why did we do it? Why did we do it when we did? What the objectives of the war were?
Well, Jason, not a lot of oversight, maybe not enough explaining by President Trump, though he's made a couple speeches.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, we can go back to, every Democrat that has been president or ran for the office, and Republican as well, that has said if Iran continues to pursue nuclear weapons, we will bomb them. We will take decisive military action. This is the first president who really, since Reagan, has taken decisive military action against the Islamic Republic. And we can't forget that they are a global sponsor of terrorism. They are a threat to peace and stability throughout the Middle East and the world. We know this, facts. Do I think the ceasefire is going to hold? Absolutely not. Do I think you're already seeing Iran break the ceasefire and do what they have historically, which is overreach, overpromise, lie, deceit, and anything in order for their own fundamentalist leadership to survive? Well, what's left of it at this point. So this is difficult for Americans. It's difficult for all of us. I mean, I paid for gas to come down here today. It's difficult. I do think that Americans have lost that sense of self-sacrifice in order for a common good that's going to benefit not just themselves, but the entire world long term. I hope we get back to a little bit of that. I think that's important for our own Americana ethos, if you would. So it's going to be a wait and see, I think. I think however this plays out, it will be over the next 4 to 8 weeks. And I hope it's over this weekend. But no one can really tell yet.
Emily, your thoughts?
From the beginning, this war has been one where there's not been a clear articulation of the why, as you heard Senator King say. We have had no consistent definition of success, moving targets every week. And meanwhile, Americans are left paying the price literally at the pump. I think it's important to take a minute and praise our military, who is acting and performing brilliantly. While at the same time, our political leaders are failing us. They are not performing brilliantly. The president, Pete Hegseth, they are not doing the role of not only explaining themselves to Congress and explaining themselves to the American people, but even to the world. The whole world was surprised by this war. And that doesn't put us in a position of leadership as a nation. So I think we have work to do, again, especially as Americans are paying the price at the pump. And of course, we all want this to end soon. We want it to end in a way that is positive for the United States. Of course we do. But instead, we now have a younger Ayatollah who may even be more extreme. So when I think about how's it going, I can't help but think it's not going well at all. And I'm worried about it. And I think most Americans are.
Yeah, it's first of all, I think it's disingenuous to say the world did not know this was coming. Multiple deadlines were given. Just a few months ago, we went after enriched uranium plants with Israel in a joint operation. We were pre-positioning equipment, men, material, warships in the region. This is not a huge surprise, and it shouldn't have been to any nation around the world. They knew this was happening. And I think a part of it is that on one side they're going to, claim shock and dismay, and they're going to, clutch their pearls. But on the other side, they're thankful because this entire time they've been paying more for petroleum products going in and out of the Persian Gulf simply on insurance premiums, because you just don't know what a completely lunatic regime is going to do, which they've proven time and time again over the last 47 years. So I do believe we're going to get through this. I believe this is economically going to put us and the world back. But I think we're going to recover. We're going to be better than ever after this is done. And yes, missteps were made. Missteps were made politically.
Just the last word. You don't think this is in our national interests?
I don't think that case has been made. If it is in our best interest internationally, that case has not been made by the President of the United States. I think that is objectively true. And that is something that is a huge deal when it comes to the confidence of the American people and the transparency with the Congress and the American people.
And what about the thoughts about the nuclear program? Is anyone having an Iraq flashback to the WMD case that President Bush did make very strongly in advance?
I think
Do we know proof?
No, they got it. They got it. They admitted it. They got it. There's enough intel out there that's been shared with the world.
In Iran.
In Iran, yes. That this is not like, well, hey, let's conjecture maybe they have something. And by the way, back to Iraq, when they said that weapons of mass destruction, they were using poison gas and VX nerve agents on their own people in Iraq.
Right.
Same thing with Iran. They were using them on each other. We do know WMDs exist in that region, and we absolutely know because they've admitted it, and they have all the material that they've been enriching. I think it's roughly 800 to 900 pounds of uranium.
Okay.
So that's a fact.
Well, we'll find out soon enough. We're going to take another break, and when we come back, who doesn't want a data center in their backyard? Legislation working its way through the final days of the state legislature session could make Maine the first in the nation to freeze large data center construction. A proposed moratorium until the end of next year, 2027, would apply to data centers using at least 20 megawatts of electricity. That's enough energy to power more than 15,000 homes. Cities like Lewiston and towns like Wiscasset have already rejected data centers. The owner of the old J paper mill says more than $10 million has been put into the property to convert it to a data center beginning in July.
People, understandably, they view a data center is a data center is a data center, and that's just not the case. And I cannot wait for a study or I cannot wait for a moratorium to run its path.
Moratorium, good idea, bad idea? We need more information. What's up?
You know, I think it's important to note that while this is again getting a lot of attention just in the last month or so, this is actually a bill that's been being worked much longer than that, right? This is something the legislature has been worked on. There's a lot of people who feel really powerfully on both sides, both about the impact on the environment, the real impact on our environment with water, with electricity, our stress in a state that is rural. But at the same time, we have a lot of towns that, like Jay, you hear them make the case. So I think this is not a cut and dry issue. I don't even see it as a strictly partisan issue. But I think that it's important to say that this is a moratorium it's about an 18-month moratorium. And I honestly don't know what's going to happen with it in the next week, in the next few days, as the legislature wraps up. I think you had the governor, particularly, on the side, saying, wait a second, Jay has been going through this process. They've been going through the permitting process. Now we're going to change the rules. You heard that from the...
There might be an exception for Jay in this bill.
We don't know,
yeah,
right? And
yeah.
so I think this is an example of something that's going to move quickly this week. I can't tell you exactly what's going to happen with it, but I think it is an important question for us to ask as a state where we are very natural resource dependent, where we have a lot of needs for our electricity. We want to grow. We certainly want to grow the economy in Maine. But I think the question is, does a moratorium accomplish that? And a relatively short moratorium in this case, does that put us in a position to get better answers?
What about economic development? Is this a
a
NIMBY problem, not in my backyard?
It kind of is, a little bit, okay? So I'm going to take my Republican analyst hat off and I'm going to put my business person hat on. First of all, 18 months in the speed of business is an eternity. It will kill deals, hence the old adage, time kills all deals. This will kill it. Jay, kill. Lewiston, I was actually at City Hall for another topic listening to this debate. Well, it really wasn't a debate. It was a bunch of people, ironically, using data on their phones that was populated from a data center somewhere else in order to come up with, using AI, some sort of argument against this, even though if you read the packet, it was going to produce its own power. It was going to use, a couple thousand gallons of water. It was ridiculously, kind of like the average household usage annually. This was a closed loop system. It was going to provide $300 million in new assessed value for the city of Lewiston and jobs and a new business incubation center. All great things in an infill lot. But because of the NIMBYism that was there, and really, frankly, people aren't getting by the paywalls of the newspaper anymore, so they're not reading the full articles, only the headlines. They're making ill and really poor decisions. I feel bad for Jay. I feel bad for Lewiston. I feel bad for all businesses in any sector because guess what? They're looking at Maine. If they're thinking about, coming to Maine after we get a Republican legislature and a Republican governor, and they're going, great. If this doesn't happen, are we going to be regulated to death? Because the other thing that businesses need is regulatory certainty. And one thing that Maine, under the Democrat socialist control, have actually shown a propensity for is producing really regulation uncertainty. So yes, is it NIMBY? Absolutely. Is it just pandering to the far left, the uninformed minority of people that are scared of anything and want no growth because they already have something? Yeah, I think that's the case.
The fear factor winning the day. And by the way, other states are looking at this kind of legislation as well.
Absolutely. We're not alone because we already have a track record in other places of the damage that these data centers can do when they are not done correctly.
Which is what, draining the local electricity supply?
And water, right?
But if they provide their own power?
Well, this is why we have to make sure we get it right. Those are good questions,
No,
right?
I think we just got it right. Let's write it up and send it up to Augusta.
Those are good questions. I mean, if they put us in charge, Jason,
But you
we
know
could
what?
do good things. But I think
anyone could do this.
The piece, I mean, I think I want to just say that I agree with Jason that it's important to have a strong regulatory environment that is clear and that is consistent, right? I think that makes,
Yes.
I'm on board with that completely. I think in this case, this is a national question as well about what are the impact of these centers. I think we have a responsibility to ask those questions in Maine to get those answers right, particularly in a state that has seen environmental bad things happen too before, right? We take our environmental health in Maine so seriously.
You could require the data centers to put solar panels on all the roofs, for instance.
Well, I don't want to pretend to be the policy expert on this, but I think there's a lot of questions to ask.
Jobs and potential corporate tax revenue to the state if we block these.
I mean, first of all, it's something more than nothing, right, that we have now. It is the spin-off industries here, especially, I'm going to look at the one in Lewiston because I really looked at that deeply. They were going to have on the top floor of the data center an incubation business lab where new businesses could come, hopefully spurred up from the Rue Institute, to come and really kind of magnify their new data-centric businesses and then grow from there. We won't have that now. Okay, but they won't have that ability. So it's what we don't have, it's opportunities. And yes, this is where it's NIMBYism, because we're denying ourselves the potential for positive opportunities in Maine. Working within data, which is the future, in a lot of different avenues, we're denying future generations that kind of choice of job. Now, let's go back a little bit. Moratoriums are where good ideas go to die.
Or they're a pause for thoughtful reflection and questions.
I'm telling you what, if you need to think on
okay.
anything for 18 months, you shouldn't be in a position where you make a decision.
A lot can happen in 18 months. You're right. There's going to be an election this fall. We're going to see a lot potentially change.
But think about moratoriums. And I did. As a mayor, I did moratoriums.
We're going to have a new governor.
We did it. We are going to have a new Republican governor.
We're going to have a new Democratic
that.
governor. And
well,
it's going to
the
be
socialist governor, the Democrat socialist of Maine,
really, people are going to, it's going to be like a drinking game or something every time you say it, because you're just trying to will it to happen, but it's not true.
No, I'm not willing it. It's just happening in front of us. And this is another example of this. Because they can't understand it. They don't have the mental capacity. They're going to deny it for 18 months.
That's not fair.
We'll have to pick this up after the legislature adjourns in April and see what happens.
Who knows? A lot can happen in a few days.
I want to thank my guests, Emily Cain and Jason Levesque, for being on the program this week. That's all for Political Brew, and thank you for watching.